The once original Stalker fell in love with millions of players who have been waiting almost 2 decades for news of a sequel. And that day has come. Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl, appeared on the shelves of stores. What came out of it, I'll tell you right now. In Heart of Chernobyl, players will get acquainted with the story of Skiff, a stalker not of his own free will. The hero found a strange artifact outside the zone and went to this dangerous place to get more information about it. He wants to change his life for the better, but because of the attack of unknown people and the theft of the found object, he takes the path of revenge and goes for answers. The story doesn't develop very fast, but will eventually make the character the center of the narrative again. A man who can change the zone for the better. The developers, this time, tried to create a full-blown scenario, which unfortunately doesn't work properly. The main line in the game is able to occupy the gamer, but is completely devoid of emotional component, so it is unlikely to fall into the soul. It's just an ordinary story about the next hero, as from a book series, more than 300 works have already been riveted together. And you don't want to spend dozens of hours searching for an artifact lost in the prologue. If the player is familiar with all the book products, has hung posters around the room, and has already gone to Pripyat dozens of times, then S2 is definitely suitable for him. Fan service pumped significantly. Familiar characters, references to various bygone events. A newcomer will not understand the eggs, but the fan will definitely find something familiar. Not just a place or an artifact, but some iconic fragment of a bygone era. But most of all, Stalker, always attracted with its spirit and atmosphere. And here, everything is in order. Various locations will take you to the half-destroyed world, filled with anomalies and mysterious creatures. Each region is able to surprise with its filling and delight with exploration, something that was so beloved in previous games. Everywhere is full of points of interest, various structures, iconic locations, and unique locales. It's a truly cool place to wander and search for supplies. After launching, you're lightning fast immersed in what's going on, and at first you even get very involved in the process, but only at first. Only on the atmosphere the game is able to maintain the interest of fans of the original. Everything is here for that. The rest of the players, most likely, will be stuck in monotonous gameplay and secondary side quests. Come, kill, find, return, and other ordinary activities. Sometimes, of course, there are random encounters that can amuse the stalker, but not often at all. And it is possible not to run into them at all because of inattention and be left without a share of content. Let's move away from the atmosphere and jump into an empty, unremarkable world. The Varta group, which has defeated all other clans outside of the games, dominates the zone. Yes, you can still meet some representatives, but such acquaintances are perceived more as pass hacks than important and useful. And the territories, frankly speaking, are quite desolate. Skirmishes between the military and bandits, as well as clashes with monsters still occur, but not so often. Sometimes you can even a dozen minutes without meeting anyone. And the issue of the appearance of enemies has not been solved. Taken out of the task at a checkpoint with a bunch of military, get ready to endlessly shoot new enemies. All of them are bound to a certain area and can appear literally at the player's back. The corresponding marker on the screen will inform you about it. It is not clear for what reason the developers did not put at least an hour block on the respawning of enemies. It would have allowed not to fall out of the game world. The whole gameplay is focused around exploring locations and performing various tasks with the destruction of opponents. And if, on the part of exploring territories, you can find at least some fun with unique locations, then on the part of combat encounters, everything is much worse. And it's not just about mediocre shooting, but also about the meager intelligence of the opponents. We look out for a second, and half a map later the opponent's exact line is already flying. There is no way to ensure against this, but only to show ingenuity and bypass the hostile stalker from the other side. Sometimes enemies can go in the direction of the hero in a frontal attack, but more often simply hide behind the nearest cover, shoot a little and occasionally change positions. But you can praise the financial system. You won't be able to earn millions of coupons. You'll have to spend the accumulated funds thoughtfully and allocate them to your needs. Pharmacies and food at the average level should be enough to survive, but the repair of equipment will have to deal with often. By the way, the player is free to install modifications on the guns, improve them, and armor. The whole gameplay is built so that the gamer feels the hardcore nature of what is happening. Hence the complexity of firefights, the need for constant repairs, low load capacity with a noticeable slowdown in movement, dangerous monsters ready to shred the player in a short period of time. And at first, it all works. But gradually the whole charge of vivacity, enthusiasm for events, and mediocre gameplay come to naught. Somehow everything is too dull and monotonous. The first unique anomalies surprised and amazed, you had to look for an approach to them. Shootouts didn't bore you, though they looked crappy. Missions were missions. It's good that they are present. And further, annoying gloom and sorrowful grief. Through a beer, ate sausage with bread, and continue to fight with bandits and mutants. Also the main thing. Turn off the music? No kidding. The music in this game is extremely mediocre. Some dull, dragged-out pinging in an attempt to create an atmosphere of horror. The game doesn't need that. I repeat, turn the music to 0 and leave only the sounds. And enjoy. Oh, I almost forgot. Better turn off the radio too, like I did. Alas. But the developers couldn't resist, and still added Russophobic nastiness to the radio air. Back to the visual style, and we get very beautiful locations, which we mentioned earlier. But not everywhere. We go to the forest and enjoy the beauty of the landscape, the sky, the outliers, the weather phenomena, the color scheme, and the realism of the visuals. Then we go into a building, look in some depressing corner, and notice a very low-quality picture. Perhaps it's just my personal complaint, but such double feelings haunted me all the time. It seems to be fun and true, but always with a tinge of but. Break immersion and numerous bugs with technical problems. Already found modders who have released fixes, but I would like to see fixes and patches from the studio. On RTX 3060, everything is quite playable, but often there were graphic artifacts, various bugs, and nuances. There are also sharp jumps in frame rate, from autosaves to changes in terrain and climate when moving from one part of the zone to another. I've seen worse implementation, so at some point stopped paying attention to the problems, but for many gamers, especially with weaker hardware, it will become critical. Still, even in a post-apocalyptic shooter, you want to play at least at a stable 60 FPS, and not again and again to grab the standard of last-generation consoles in 30 FPS. Although perhaps, even lower values would not seem critical in the absence of a drastic change of indicators. But now we have what we have. Stalker 2. Heart of Chernobyl can't be called a bad game, but it won't be an outstanding one either. This project turned out to be a solid mediocre, with a huge atmospheric world and detailed, in some places, graphics, but with extremely dull shooting, stupid intelligence of enemies, and missing random event system. At some point, you want to hope that what you see in a dozen hours will at least somehow change. But the game does not try to go beyond the basic concept, providing a monotonous gameplay with a bunch of bugs. If you look at it from the other side, the project is presented as a big fan service with a bunch of iconic characters for the series and references to past events. The developers managed to bring back 2007. The game runs on most computers, but it gives the right atmosphere for a post-Soviet person. Almost one and the same, but in 17 years. Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl, can be called interesting for fans of the original. It works well on nostalgia, but definitely a questionable product for the mass gamer. With all the significant positive features before the release of a ton of mods and fixing significant bugs, the project is unlikely to appeal to the average player. But it's possible to play with a subscription.